and start admitting people. Hi, Janira. Hi, Nora.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, hello. We have Dr. Fallon with us. I'm going to hit the gather time really quick just to message them, share the Zoom link. But if y'all want to chat, completely up to you. So,
Sounds good. Hello, hello. I'm excited to be here.
Happy to have you.
Hopefully we haven't gotten into too much Zoom fatigue yet. Okay, that's good.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Nora.
I'm still finishing lunch, so I'm going to turn my camera off for a few minutes.
This is okay.
Happy to be here.
I'm actually 2 hours ahead of Central Time, so it's like getting on to dinner for me.
I'm 3. So over here it's about to be 3.
Oh, wow. Where are you?
Connecticut.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I just
Whereabouts in
graduated
Connecticut?
from Central,
You
CCSU.
did
Yeah.
it? Hey.
But I'm pretty sure I was there while you were head of the psych department because I'd been trying to get my undergraduate psych degree on and off for like 8 years. So I started in 2016 and I just graduated last year. So,
Oh, congratulations. I was never chair of the psych department, but
oh, okay.
I'm so excited. This is great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I was a psych advisor for a
Oh,
while.
gotcha.
So that might be where you recognize the name from.
Yeah.
Oh, yay. Hi, Claire.
Hello.
Hmm. So I'll wait to start until Jacob gives me the thumbs up that people have moved from Gather Town or Gather In, whatever it happens to be, over into here. Oh,
alrighty, you
I
should be
think
good to
Jacob.
go. Yep.
All right,
We
Jacob's
might have
giving
a
me
few
the
more
thumbs
people
up.
coming in, but yeah.
Sure. All right. So, hi everyone. I'm Dr. Marianne Fallon. I'm the Executive Director of Psi Chi, and I've been in this role for about 2 years. Before I became Executive Director of Psi Chi, I was at Central Connecticut State University with Janira for almost 18 years. So I loved my time at Central. My favorite thing to teach at Central was research methods. I taught it regularly. I brought students to conventions, particularly the Eastern Psychological Association and sometimes APS, the Association for Psychological Science. So this topic is near and dear to my heart. So this presentation or workshop really is meant to be interactive. So I highly expect you to interrupt with questions, pop your hand up digitally or physically in your camera. When you have a question, I'll be sure to stop and answer. Jacob, do we have chat enabled too? We're good with chat? Okay, cool. All right, so I'm also going to keep my chat window open. So if you see me looking up and to, I guess, your left, I'm looking at the chat window. Great. So I am super, super excited to talk with you today about using research skills to build your career story. So with that in mind, I'm going to tell you what you can expect. There we go. This is a workshop in 3 acts. The first act is level setting, which means that we're going to talk about what we mean by research skills and what is skills and what are CVs and what are resumes, etc. So we're all on the same page, at least definitionally, amongst us. I will also say that, are there regularly agreed upon definitions of some of these things? Nope. So we just want to make sure that internally we are consistent. And then I'll try to highlight places where you might see some differences depending on the context that you're in. Act 2 is some practical advice and a little bit of practice on your part. We only have about 45 minutes together, so we can't practice too much, but I want to give you at least some. And Act 3 is talking about how you can continue building opportunities for research experience. So, all right. Okay, so what are research skills anyway? When we talk about research skills, what do those mean? So I'm going to open it up to everybody. I mean, when you hear the words research skills, what do you think?
It's like the ability to analyze data, look at data sets, develop research questions, those types of things.
Great. So analyze data, interpret data, generate research questions. What else?
Work with a research team.
Collaborate with a research team. Yeah. What else?
Oh yeah, so I was gonna say that same thing, that teamwork is something huge with research, and
Mhm.
also being able to think critically uh, about everything you guys are doing, basically.
Right. Critical thinking, teamwork, analytical skill, technological skill with analysis. Nobody's screaming out communication, which is fun, of communicating your science, communicating your research, right? So, what I'd like to do for the next few minutes is just try to find language that we can use to capture your research skills. Now, the language that I'm going to use is, I would say, general language. The research part is really the context. So, you can use the language of the skills to then talk about how you're exhibiting that skill in the context of research. Okay. So for that, I am going to point you to a resource called the Skillful Psychology Student. Has anybody heard of this resource before? It was put out by the American Psychological Association. Nora, I expected you to. Jacob might have heard about it too. But for the students, you may not realize that this exists. So there's QR code on the side there if you want to go find it. And this document is intended to help give students the language that they can use with employers to communicate everything that they have been learning within their psychology major, including their research courses as well as experience. So you'll see some things here that we've already talked about. For example, cognitive skills involving analysis, analytical thinking, Mary noted that, critical thinking, Joaquin noted that, creativity, information management, judgment and decision making. All of these things you can be exerting within a research context. Communication, both oral and written. How many of you have done an oral presentation of your research or talked about your research with people? There we go. Great. Awesome. And in addition to the communication, there are 3 other domains that these folks, these colleagues have identified to help people talk about the skills they build when they're a psychology major. Personal, the adaptability and agility to be able to pivot when you need to pivot. How many of you in your research projects or in your research experience had something happen that you didn't expect and you had to deal with? I can see by the expressions on people's faces, like, yes, that happened. And guess what? It's a skill to be able to respond to that constructively. Integrity. Are you conducting your research ethically? Self-regulation. Research is an emotional roller coaster. This is what I would say at the beginning of every research methods course to my students. Expect it. It is an integral part of the process. It is inherently emotional, and you need self-regulation to navigate those ups and downs, both cognitively as well as emotionally. There are social components. We talked about collaboration and teamwork, inclusivity, being able to see things from multiple perspectives. When you get to that discussion portion of your research project and you're thinking, how generalizable is this research? You're trying to understand how your research fits into a context and from different perspectives. Leadership and management. Do you have an opportunity to be a mentor or a role model to someone who has less experience than you do? Service orientation. When you are testing participants, if you're doing it in a face-to-face kind of manner, can you show empathy? And then there's the technological pieces. R, SPSS, any other type of statistical suite that we're using, other technological types of tools. And I would add to this, this was done in 2019, please add AI to that part of technological skills. It is incredibly important that we're building our artificial intelligence literacy, as well as our skill in using artificial intelligence in ethical, responsible ways. So, any questions so far?
No questions, but as an update, your mic, I'm not sure if that's Bluetooth, it kind of goes in and out of sounding very robotic-y to like very clear to robotic-y. So like still understandable, but just as a heads up in case someone might ask you to repeat for clarity's sake, yeah.
You know, I'm
going to switch to my array mic. Okay. If you hear a dog bark or children in the background, just realize that that is part and parcel of what you're getting with my array mic.
Okay. Sounds
Right
good.
on.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. But thank you, Jacob. I appreciate hearing about that. And let me know if I start going in and out again. Okay. Some questions. Again, this is still part of level setting. What are the differences between a CV, a curriculum vitae, and a resume? These places where you're supposed to be demonstrating your skill. What's the difference between the two?
I'd say a resume is more of like job oriented. So everything that you've worked on as far as like your employment history, and then your CVs, like everything you've ever done pretty much in like your college, your research, poster sessions, classes you've taken, anything that you've done in your college life, basically.
All right, so I'm hearing like your CV is basically your college comprehensive, this is my life. And your resume may be more targeted and specific to a particular job opportunity, which may not be as comprehensive, but nevertheless needs to be targeted and focused. What else?
That's kind of been how I've thought about it too, is that one is kind of more for academics and one is more for the workforce.
That's a good way of overall summarizing it. I'm going to get a little bit more granular, and some of the things that I'm going to talk about we've already mentioned, but for a CV, as Janine mentioned, we have an academic trajectory, right? So this really is your academic history in more than a nutshell. It usually tends to be pretty long because it is comprehensive. And it's also developmental. And what I mean by developmental is that it shows progression of, kind of where you started and where you are now. It's usually organized slightly chronologically, or always chronologically, so you can see what you're working on most recently compared to what things you were working on a couple of years ago. I would also say, and this is contextual, so I'm going to show you some examples of this. when you're talking about skills in a CV, they're kind of implicit in descriptions of your experience. So if you were talking about your research experience and you analyze the data using R and SPSS, you don't necessarily come out and say, I have data analytical skills and technological skills using R, SPSS, and blah, blah, blah. It's kind of like, here's what I did, and you can see the skill embedded in what I did, is the typical way CVs are structured. I'm not saying that's necessarily the best way. I'm just saying that's what we normally see. Also, those skills are embedded within major sections of the CV. So that example that I just gave about data analysis, that would be tied to a specific research experience that you had. It wouldn't be necessarily in a separate section of a CV that said, here are my skills. Instead, it's contextualized within a specific experience. Resumes, on the other hand, are more job focused. As we talked about, they're also more focused just in terms of their content. They're maybe about 1 or 2 pages. They are not a CV, which can be very much more than 1 or 2 pages. Is, I would say, more of the moment rather than developmental. It's here, let me show you the skills that I have that are a match for this job right now. Okay. And it doesn't necessarily show progression unless that description is asking you to show or demonstrate progressively more responsibility. In that case, yeah, there is some developmental component to it, but these are more, generally, resumes are more of the moment. You'll also see more explicit skill identification aligned with the job posting and something more quantifiable. So instead of seeing something like, I analyzed data with R and SPSS, it would be, I ran X analyses on this many participants using these programs, right? So it would be much more explicit in what I did, generally speaking. And usually in a resume, you're actually going to see specific sections on skills. So you'll see experience with R, experience with SPSS, etc. And I'll show you some practical examples of that moving forward, because I know that's all abstract, but it's just kind of laying the scene for you. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the major differences between a CV and a resume. And so now I want to ask some more questions. How many of you have created a resume? I see 1, 2, 3. Okay, at least half, 4. Okay, great. How many of you have created a CV? Okay, all right. Excellent. So when you see the examples that I'm going to show you, I need you to be like, hey, what about this or that? If that doesn't look like my CV or resume, okay? Can we all agree that we're going to do that? Okay, I see some nods, so this is good. All right, good. Oh, good, and a thumb. Awesome. Love it. And how many of you have had a job or education-related interview? You've had an interview? A couple of you have had interviews before? Okay. All right. The reason why I'm asking that last question in particular, not we're going to spend a lot of time on interviews today, but when we're talking about skills and demonstrating skills, I think you will see that certain skills come into play more often depending on what medium we're talking about. If we're talking about a CV, if we're talking about a resume, or we're talking about a job interview. So let me just illustrate what I mean by that. All right, remember those skills that we were talking about before for psychology students, the skillful psychology student? I think, generally speaking, when you're demonstrating cognitive skills, those are going to come out very clearly within your CV or your resume. You may, in a job interview, be asked some questions about judgment and decision making. You know, like, tell me about a time where you had to make a really difficult decision, and I want to see your thought process on that. But I think mostly when you're trying to get your foot in the door for a graduate school committee or for a job, these types of skills are mostly going to be conveyed within those written documents. When we get into the communication piece, sure, the written documents are going to display some element of your written communication skills, as well as any list of publications. Presentations may speak to oral communication skills. It'll just say that you did it, really, not how well you did. That's really where the interview comes in, to see how well you can communicate orally in a moment. You can also prepare really well for job interviews and prepare for that oral communication skill. So please, 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 role play, role play, role play. All right. Now, here's where I think it gets really interesting. Those personal skills, right? The adaptability, the integrity, and the self-regulation. I think those are really, really hard to capture in a CV or in a resume. And I would also say that those are the skills that kind of put you over the finish line for a graduate school commitment or a job. I think those are the skills that come out most clearly when you're in an interview. And a really good employer or research mentor for graduate school is going to ask about those things or try to get you to talk about situations where they can get a sense of your adaptability, your integrity, and your self-regulation. Okay. The social skills also, I would say, are mostly, but not entirely, captured within that interview. I think within the CV and within the resume, there are some things that may convey these social skills, particularly for management and leadership. If you've had an opportunity to run or be a lab manager or run a project where you had other people, you were coordinating other folks, and collaboration as well. So I think some of that can be captured within your CV and your resume, but a lot of that is also an opportunity for you to tell really compelling stories during that interview. And finally, the technological piece, I think that's largely your CV and your resume. If you're going into a research-based program where there are some really technological requirements, like if you're going into quant, I wouldn't be surprised if you talk a lot of shop in an interview. But generally speaking, your CV and your resume can really reflect your technological skill, and kind of the more things that you've tried out reflect that adaptability and that willingness to learn and try new things. So, you know, if you've done SPSS and a little bit of JASP and a little bit of R and a little bit of this, that's helpful. Okay. So I also want to, I don't know if I'm going to clarify things or muddy the waters, probably muddy the waters. I want to talk about something called durable skills. And this is definitely related to what I was just talking about for these skillful psychology students. This really is getting more into that personal and social, but some other elements of what we were talking about. Durable skills have often been called soft skills. They're hard to quantify, really. They're hard to demonstrate, really. However, not ironically, it's what employers say they really, really want in their workers. And I also think it's probably what graduate student mentors would like to see in their students. So durable skills are kind of how you use what you know and these character elements for you. So America Succeeds published this in 2021. I included the link here if you ever wanted to get to it. They analyzed 82 million job postings between 2019 and 2020. And we all know what happened in the end of 2020, but just bear with me. 7 out of 10 of the most requested skills in job postings by employers were these durable skills. And the argument is that if you're building and demonstrating these durable skills, these are the ones that are resistant to automation. In other words, these are the skills that AI cannot replace or other machines cannot replace. Okay, this will look overwhelming, all right? Just take a deep breath and realize that they wanted to categorize 100 different words and try to get them arranged in such a way that they were easier to talk about and understand. And the reason why I put this here is because if you see any of these words in a job description, I want you to be able to map them onto something more reliably. Okay, so that's the reason why I put this really, really busy graph right up here for you. The main things that you need to understand or take away from this are the durable skills. And there are 10 that America Succeeds categorized: leadership, character, collaboration, communication, creativity, critical thinking, metacognition, which is that self-regulation that you saw before, mindfulness, that's more of the social piece that you saw before, growth mindset, and fortitude. So some of these map directly onto the things that we just talked about, and some of these are conceptualize skills a little bit differently than before. And the reason why I wanted to show you this was so that you had another way of thinking about how you can self-assess, as well as recognize what certain job descriptions are asking for. So it's more like a translation tool than anything else. Okay. All right. So that was all the level setting. And I know level setting takes a while because we just want to make sure we're all on the same page. But we're moving into Act 2, the practical advice and some of the practice. So, all right. So here's an example of a CV. All right. This is one that I got from the UPenn's career office. This is not a psychology CV. This is for biology, because I wanted to just show that this is more of a general approach than one that's specifically psychological, but I still wanted it to be research of a scientific nature. And important, well, actually, let me ask you, what jumps out at you from the CV as what you think is a great way to demonstrate skills? How are skills demonstrated within this example of a CV? And I know there's an explicit skills section. This isn't a trick question. Usually there isn't, but for somebody with some technical expertise, particularly for lab technicians, sometimes I wouldn't be surprised if a faculty mentor suggested, hey, maybe you want to put this on there, especially if they're trying to find a good fit to a certain research lab for graduate school. But can you see skills embedded in other ways?
I wanted to comment. I like how the skills section is like very like broad in the bold and then specific. I usually just put the specifics instead of the broad and then bold and then yeah. I like that aspect.
Good observation, right? So it's like saying, you know, here's the laboratory procedures and here are the things that fall under laboratory procedures. Here's language and here's what falls under language, rather than going straight into the specifics. That's what you're saying, Ben? Good deal. Yeah. So can you see some skills embedded in some of the other elements of the CV?
I was gonna say it's integrated into their teaching and their leadership experience, which is really
Mhm.
clever because by kind of explaining what they were doing there, they can also talk about how they were excelling there too.
So that's a great observation, Joaquin. Can you give me a specific example and what that communicates to you?
So specifically in the second one,
Mhm.
there it talks about how they were able to facilitate weekly office hours and how they were able to design workshops and practice problems to aid student learning, which are
Mhm.
skills in and of itself, even though it just seems like a job requirement. But being able to do those things effectively is totally a skill.
Right. That's speaking to creativity, right? So being able to design the worksheets and practice problems, you're showing some creativity doing that. Facilitating those weekly office hours, that's showing time management, reliability, dependability.
Totally.
Yeah. Organizing biweekly events to build community, more management, more leadership, community facing. So understanding diverse perspectives. So all of this, I mean, I actually find CVs hard because you have to read into the skills that are embedded in the actions, right? Um, so that's what I find hard about CVs, but it's there, but it's like you have to kind of unearth it. So what I think the important lesson is for all of you is that the easier you can make it for someone reading to say, that's creative, that's community minded, that's empathetic, that's reliable, that's dependable. The more you can use language or craft it in such a way that it immediately screams those things, those skills at the person reading it, the better off you are. Because you are reducing their cognitive load and they will thank you. I didn't mention I'm a cognitive scientist by training or cognitive psychologist by training, so I am all about reducing cognitive load. The more you can do that for people, the better. Like Jacob's happy about that. Right on. Very cool. So what I want to do now is just show you how some of this information might look represented as a resume. And full disclosure, I asked ChatGPT to help me with this so that because what I really wanted to do was just show like one side of the coin being the CV and then the other side of the coin being the resume. And I also wanted to show you the limitations of AI at the same time. So you're welcome for all of those things. So, oh shoot, I went too far ahead. I forgot I was going to ask. I did this in class all the time too. I was going to ask you to take a moment and if you haven't done this already, to just think about how you would compose your most recent research experience for your CV and to check yourself and to see if your description really contextualizes your skill. So these are skills demonstrated in context. And can somebody pull out the skill from the context? So we have some time. How about we all take like 2 minutes to just write down a couple or jot down a couple of ideas from our most recent research experience and how you would put that together on your CV and see what you'd say. So I'll let you know when 2 minutes is up. If anybody wants to put it in chat, that'd be awesome. Thanks, Alex, for sharing. If others are still kind of wrapping up what they wrote, that would be great. But if anybody also feels like they wrapped up what they wrote and wants to ask Alex any specific questions about the bullet points that he shared with us, please feel free. I'm going to start because I am not familiar with your research area. So when you say conduct systematic review on food insecurity in oncology patients exceeding a screening target, what exactly does that mean?
So this is for screening oncology articles within
Yeah.
healthcare research. So for example, reading over the abstracts and seeing if they fit the criteria or not.
Oh, I see. Okay. So I got it. So you had criteria for inclusion for articles for a systematic review.
Yes.
Got it. Was it, and it's fine if it was just me, did anyone else have the same question that I had? Jacob had the same question? Okay. Can we maybe give Alex some feedback on what might be more helpful for someone for that skill to kind of jump out a little bit more at who's ever reading it?
I can imagine that, you can say that you've conducted a systematic review, perhaps using like a specific type of guidelines. Like there's some pretty well-known ones, and that can demonstrate that you're familiar with that. You know that there's different types of systematic reviews, like Prisma or Nairo or stuff like that. So you can say the framework that you're using, and you just might be a little bit more direct of saying, developed inclusion exclusion criteria or implemented inclusion exclusion criteria. Because the wording of exceeding screening target of 2,000 articles is a little bit confusing, and so just maybe in more plain English would just be like you either developed it or you implemented it, and so it's just a little bit more direct. But that's what I would say for the first bullet point. But
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's great. All right. So that's the kind of thing that could be really helpful when you are sharing elements of your CV, either with your mentor, with your peers. I don't know if anybody's in Psi Chi, but with your Psi Chi chapters and colleagues. So please have people read it over so that they can give you some really constructive feedback. All right. So I'm going to move on to talking about what the same experiences might look like in a resume context, while I demonstrate some of the limitations of generative AI, because that's fun. Okay, so it's still the same Jane Doe, and just to let you know what I asked ChatGPT to do, I said, hey, look at this CV. By the way, before I said, hey, look at this CV, I said, tell me what the differences are between CVs and academic resumes. And I trained him up on that to make sure that we were all on the same page on what those are. And I said, great, now use the CV and translate it into a resume. Okay. Even though they don't know what the job description is or anything else, that's all right. But this is the information from Jane Doe before, now translated in a different format as you can see, but also expressed a little differently. I did give ChatGPT a little bit of leeway to say, hey, if you need to make it more quantitative and explicit, please do that. And it's okay if you make a couple things up in order to get there. That's fine, right? But one of the things I noticed when I did this was that it completely didn't include all of the research experience that was on the CV. I was like, wait a second, hold on. So, and maybe it did that because it was trying to fit everything within one page. And maybe that research experience was actually far more important for the job that they're looking for, like a lab technician, than president of the biology club. I'm not sure, but maybe. So if you are choosing to use generative AI to kind of help you in translation from a CV to a resume, you know, always human, we'll check it over. It's very important for your eyes and your brain to review it and make sure that everything is accurate and it's including things that make sense for it to include. Okay. Right. Here too, and this goes back to a point that Ben made a little bit earlier, the skills are specifically highlighted. Interestingly, AI put certifications underneath here too. For better or for worse, I'm not sure. But also, again, had those, you know, main categories, retained the main categories, and then the specifics, as Ben said he thought was really like effective, and I would agree. It helps people understand or expect what's to come. Yep. Oops. All right, hold on. Was there any questions about that before I flipped over? I was all excited. Okay, cool. I wanted to give you some resources on resume advice. And full disclosure, these are resources from Psi Chi. It's the Eye on Psi Chi. You do not have to be a member of Psi Chi to look at our magazine and benefit from all of the articles in our magazine or in our journal, turns out. So please use Psi Chi as a resource for building your career. There are two that I wanted to point out. There's one by Sly and Ritzer on resume advice that was published in 2020. I think this is a really good, short, helpful way of thinking about what you need to be looking for in your resume. I should also point out that their article was geared towards ATIs, so basically automated machines reading your resume and trying to match what was in a resume to a job description. So they really took into account if this was a robot reader or a human reader. So I think that that's really helpful. And there is another one that goes a little bit more into how cover letters and resumes work together. Now, cover letters were beyond the scope of today's workshop, but I wanted to give you a resource to kind of show you how those two work together. And of course, the cover letter also works with the CV too. So hopefully those are helpful resources for you. And Jacob, we're going until 3:45, right? Or 3:45 Eastern, 2:45 Central? Is that right? You're muted, Jacob.
I'm saying if you need a little bit more time, yes, it was scheduled to end at 45 for a 15-minute break. But if you need an extra 5-10 minutes, I'm sure that was fine.
I'll take 5. I won't take 10, or
Okay.
you know, I won't take 15. People
Take
need,
as much as you need.
people need break.
Yeah, yeah.
People need breaks. Okay. Just a note about AI. It's an eager assistant. Just realize it's an eager assistant. Use it to check things. Don't use it to generate things, really. And you can ask it even to check for fit of a resume against the job description to see if you're using the language of the job description to kind of generate that match. This is not to say you want to misrepresent yourself in any way, but you do want to be using the terms that are in the job description and not a local variant of a term. You probably want to get it just head on as much as possible. although models are improving every day, nevertheless. Try to match that job description as much as possible. So Act 3. How do you build opportunities for research experience? It sounds like you're all doing that already. However, I do want to share with you some opportunities that you may not be aware of. And yes, a lot of these opportunities have to do with Psi Chi too, some of which you have to be a member for, some of which you don't. So I just want to show you what Psi Chi has available to folks. So of course, in terms of building your research experiences, you have some curricular opportunities at your institutions. Your research methods courses, if they offer the opportunity to do an independent project, great. Honors theses, independent studies, take advantage of all of those curricular opportunities. Some even do research assistantships or internships. Do it, do it, do it. Labs on campus. So you might have some faculty on campus who are looking for research assistants on a volunteer basis. Summer research experiences. Some of these are widely publicized and some are not. But there are certain institutions that do summer research experiences, and you don't necessarily have to be a student of that institution. So be on the lookout for those particular types of experiences. Sometimes to do research, you need a little bit of funding. So I did want to just point out, in case people don't know, Psi Chi offers a fair amount of money in awards, grants, and scholarships every year to the tune of about $400,000 US. So if you are a Psi Chi member, please take advantage of these funding opportunities. Submit a grant proposal. This is great experience that you can put on your CV or your resume, that you now have grant, basically proposal writing experience. So I just showed you undergrads, but we also have graduate student research grants as well. So we do 3 rounds, spring, summer, and fall. We have special research grants for those who are interested in diverse populations. We also have a special research grant only for undergraduates who are doing field research in social psychology, which is sponsored by Robert Cialdini. You might have heard of him. He's the guy who wrote the book on influence and persuasion, literally. And then, of course, we have some travel grants, but we also have some product grants. So Cloud Research is a partner of ours, and they are offering product grants that allow people to collect data from people all over the world. So it's kind of like MTurk, but more focused. I'll put it that way. Okay. So Psi Chi offers all of these opportunities for members. We also, if you're not a Psi Chi member and you're still looking for more experience, we have something called the NICE, which is the Network for International Collaborative Exchange. We do a crowdsourced research project every year globally. So we have contributor sites. We've had them from over 30 countries for some of our studies. So that's a really great opportunity to get further involved in research. You do need a faculty mentor in order to do it. However, with crowdsourced research, like the CREP, there is a proposal that's agreed upon for that year's project. And anybody can sign on as a contributor. You do not have to be a Psi Chi member to do it. This is open to everybody. It's open science. So you could do that as long as you have a faculty mentor willing to support you. And you can add things to it to kind of make it your own so that you have opportunities to present your piece of this as long as you're doing the standard protocol. So, yeah. So lots of opportunities for you to get more research experience. And I hope I've showcased a couple from Psi Chi that anybody can take advantage of. If you are planning on graduate school, here is an open access article that you might find helpful. And it's how much research experience is enough? What are professors' expectations for research, for competitive psychology graduate programs? So again, this is a completely open access article. please use it. Yes. Yeah, thank you so much for letting me go 4 minutes over. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to stay on and talk further, but otherwise enjoy your break and enjoy the rest of CREPCON.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome, Shamira. Thank you. Thanks, Jacob. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you for the presentation. And for those who are interested, I've talked with Dr. Fallon to see if we can get the PowerPoints shareable format as well as this recording. So in case you were like me trying to keep track of all the different resources, there will be a file that you can actually go back to and like keep track of. So
Yep, absolutely. And the Psi Chi ones are all available on the Psi Chi website, available to everybody. So just go and search our site, you'll find it.
well, if there are any questions, Umair, don't worry, I will follow up with you, or I can talk with Dr. Waggy, and so any of the attendees, we can figure out to send the PowerPoint file to everybody, along with the recording links. So I'm going to stop the current recording for the session.